Iron your fabric so that it is not near the zipper coils or the zipper teeth. Nice and smooth and flat. And then carefully flip it over and make sure that it's the same neatness on the back. That way, when we top stitch with our needle going next to our fabric here, we'll actually catch both sides, the front and the back and the lining, in our top stitching, and we only have to do it one time. I'm going to get this bit right here. It's a little bit not as sharp as I would like it to be for a crease. A couple of ways that you can top stitch. You can leave your zipper foot on, and you will just keep your zipper foot lined up with the edge of your zipper foot lined up with the edge of your fabric here, and then that will just kind of just catch the fabric. Another thing you could do is change your zipper foot back to your plain foot. Move your needle off to the left or the right, whichever you like. Mine is off to the left currently. And then just keep the center of your plain foot on the edge of your fabric. The only thing is with that, you do either way have to kind of make sure that your zipper pull is not under the fabric or under the presser foot. Or there's another zipper foot or another presser foot that I really like, sort of made for top stitching and neat things like that. I think we used this in another video, another project, when we did our tote bag handles and our pockets or our ties for our apron. And that looks like this one, and it's for edge stitching. And that's the one that I'm going to switch it to today. It has this fin in the middle that keeps the fold of your fabric right next to it. And then if you move your needle off to the left or the right, whichever is better for your project, there's no way you can get off track, and it's a really nice top stitch. There's no way you can get off track, and your needle just really travels right next to the edge of your fabric here. So that's the one we're going to use today. I believe on the machines at school, they are called a hemming foot. But as long as this fin is in the middle and it looks similar, it's probably a similar enough presser foot that it would work. So also when you top stitch, I like to lengthen my stitches just a little bit. So I'm going to go from a 2.5 to a 3.2, and it just gives you a neater appearance when you have a longer stitch length with top stitching. Don't forget to reverse at the beginning and the end. Once I get my presser foot past where the zipper pull is going to be, I'm actually going to stop and put my zipper pull back. It also doesn't matter what this side is doing when your zipper pull is pushed out of the way, because this is the side we're working on and the one that we're concerned about. Okay, I'm going to lift up my presser foot. See, I've got my tail here. It's kind of, oh, my phone doesn't want to. I'm going to lift up my presser foot so that I can keep my needle in, but I want to also move this tail of my thread and get that out of my way, because it's just going to get tangled and make a bird's nest. So we want to get that out of our way. While I have my needle down and my presser foot up, I'm going to push my zipper pull also out of the way. that's one side top stitched. If you notice, since we did a really neat job of pressing, the lining also is out of the way of the zipper pull when we use our zipper, and it is two birds with one stone. So now, instead of changing my presser foot or changing the direction I'm sewing, I'm going to go back to the beginning I had before, put my presser foot down, and this time I'm going to move my needle off to the right side all the way so that I can run down that side. Okay, now I'm going to move my zipper pull. There is our top stitching done on both sides of our zipper. Now we are going to combine. So now we have to open the pages of our book here so that the lining is right sides together. And then our zipper is sort of our halfway point, and then our outside of our bag is right sides together. So this is what it should look like. Here is the outside of our bag with our directional print, and the inside of our bag with our lining, and they are each right sides together in their own right. So then what do you do with this? It's a little bit thick here. Oops. What do you do with this right here then? Our zipper. We are going to stack it on top of itself, and we are going to actually push it toward, line up our zipper and our top stitching for the outside of the bag, and it's going to crease into, the crease is going to go into the lining. That's where we're going to stack. So you kind of want to push this zipper end here into the lining side, and then just fold it and stack it. Stack your top stitching, and we're going to put a pin right there so it doesn't shift on us. Right parallel into the zipper. Do that on the other side. Our zipper tab is going to go into the lining, stack our top stitching, and pin parallel to the zipper. Okay, now we're going to smooth out our sides here. And if you notice where we cut out the corners for our boxed corners, we want to line those things up, all of these shapes. And we're just going to pin down the side here. We start with the directional print side when we start pinning, because we want the outside of the bag to be the neatest. And if the lining side isn't exactly perfect and we have to adjust it, then it's on the inside of our bag and nobody knows but you. So you give preferential treatment to the outside of your bag. Now, if you notice, my fusible batting is shorter than the edge of my fabric, but when I do my 1/2 inch seam allowance, that's still going to get caught in the needle there. Here's my 1/2 inch. It's going to get caught in the needle, so it will actually help reduce bulk. Now, this end, this is the bottom of the bag. So since we lined up these, we're now going to just pin. Make sure we have our center creases here, so they should be already lined up, but you do want to just double check. And then continue pinning this side together. You'll do the same with the lining. If you kind of pull the outside of the bag here a little bit, it'll smooth out enough to force that crease in the zipper that we've made and make this line up a little bit better than it was. We're sort of making a little Z right here and we kind of need to smash that down so it cooperates when we stitch it. So pull the bag outside up and then smooth it from there. Make sure your pins are going on the outside edge of your fabric so that when you're turning, when you're stitching, you can pull these easier. Again, line up your center creases. We're ready to stitch. So the outside of the bag, we're actually going to stitch all 3 sides here when we do this. So we are going to go, let me get my marker here. We're going to start here with our needle. We're going to stitch this direction and reverse. So reverse and reverse. And then we're going to pick up our presser foot and our needle, turn, and then we're going to stitch this, all of this side. We're going to reverse, pick up our needle and presser foot, reverse here, and stitch to here. Once we get to the lining though, we're going to continue across this and we're going to stitch here. So do you see how this kind of angles? We're going to be stitching and then a slight turn for this angle with our needle and our presser foot. So you'll have to turn slightly with your fabric. Reverse, pick up your needle and presser foot, and then here, reverse when you start. But then we're actually only going to stitch to about here because we're going to leave about this much open so that we can turn it right side out. So I'm going to put a double pin on each side of that opening so that if I am not paying attention and I don't see my line, I'll see the double pins. So I'll know to leave that open. It's also, let's see. Okay, so then we'll continue, we'll reverse at both of these. Then we're going to continue, reverse, pick up, needle and presser foot, start again, reverse, and reverse here. And if you want to overlap into the outside of the bag, that's perfectly fine. And that's how we're going to do the sewing together of the bag. I'm going to change my presser foot back and put my needle in the center again. I'm going to shorten my stitch length to about a 7.6 2.7 or sorry, a 2.7 or 2.5 even would be okay if you would rather have that. So my needle's in the center, my plain presser foot is on, and now I'm going to start stitching in the plan that I gave you. Ideally, I'm actually going to start right here. Oh, I need to push my zipper pull out of the way because it's really creating a lot of bulk right here. So I'm just going to reach my hand in here and grab that zipper pull and just kind of unzip the zipper inside. Then the zipper pull is actually in the middle of the bag here, and it shouldn't be in the way of our stitching. You also have to kind of give it just a little bit of a tug from each side so that you know this fabric here is cooperating the way you want. Okay, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to put my needle down and use my seam gauge to double check, make sure I've got my true 1/2 inch so I stay that way all the way around. So from my needle to my stitch plate is what I'm going to measure. And my 1/2 inch seam allowance is this line right before my 5/8 inch engraving on my stitch plate there. So if you can see that. That's my 5/8, and it's this line right before the 5/8. That's where the edge of my fabric is going to be lined up the entire time I'm stitching. Don't forget to reverse. Just go slow right here. It's pretty thick. You don't want to break your needle. Half-inch seam allowance. Going to cut my tails. And I'm going to remove that first pin that I placed. Now here's a trick. These two have to come together when we box our corners. So we're going to go right to the edge here, lift up, and then you're just going to bend this around to meet. Oops, maybe I can't do it here. Just going to meet this seam allowance to that seam allowance. It's not going to do it. It doesn't want to cooperate. Usually on bigger box corners, this will work better. So I'm just going to actually I'm just not going to pull a lot of thread to be long there. And then I'm just going to pick up my needle too and place it down on my spot to start again. So you don't have a huge tail there, but on bigger box corners, like if this square is bigger, you can actually pull it and meet it easier, and then you have fewer threads to trim. But it was too much of an angle today, so it's okay. It's just a shortcut that we don't need to take if this one doesn't want to do it. But if you don't reverse and secure that seam, your bag will come apart at the corners, and that's really not ideal as you're using your bag. Okay, here's my zipper again, coming up to it. So I'm going to kind of pull this apart a little bit so that it gets the correct shape. It is as accurate as we need it to be. Might have to kind of help it under your presser foot a little bit. So there's actually a tool that you can use that comes with, I would say, gosh, almost every sewing machine I've ever owned. It's come with a type of this tool. So I'm going to pull it out here and I'll just demonstrate how to use it if you want. It's called a height compensation tool. Some companies call it a hump jumper just because it jumps over the hump of the thick fabric or a seam. I'll get it here. Okay, well, I guess I don't know where mine is, so I guess we'll skip that. So once you get close to this thickness here, you want to kind of just be aware and maybe push things out of the way. If you have to, stop your needle, lift up your presser foot, and then kind of sneak under there with it. And then, now remember, we had to change angle slightly. We're not doing a right angle, but we are slightly turning, so we want to do that. And then I will go back and take out my pins once I clear this. I'm coming up to my double pins here, so I know I'm going to have to reverse. You want to make sure you're at a half-inch seam allowance when you set your presser foot back down. Don't forget to reverse. If you don't set your presser foot down at a half-inch seam allowance, you'll have a little step in your seam allowance and your seam in your bag, and you'll actually change the shape of your bag by having that distance discrepancy if you don't make sure you're doing a half-inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to come back to the zipper again here. Okay, so we've got these. Now that's going to help us box our corners later. I like to cut these tails so they're not in my way when I'm trying to reverse my bag right side out. So that is what the stitching should look like on your bag. So this is the outside of your bag with the fusible batting, and this is the inside with the lining, and you have your opening. Before we turn our bag right side out though, we are going to grade our seams and box our corners. So what we're going to do is trim one side. Well, let's see. Yeah, we don't have to trim these, I guess. We're going to trim the lining side though, so there's less bulk inside the bag. So you're just going to take your scissors and make that seam allowance slightly less than half an inch so that all of that, once we get all of these seams together inside the bag, there's less thickness. So you're just going to go down, just trim a little bit off. You don't want to get too close to your stitching line because then there's not enough fabric left for those stitches to hold on to keep your bag secure. You'll just get a hole in your bag. in a very short amount of time. And then right here, we're going to kind of make a little V cut where the zipper trim is. That really cuts down on some of that thickness in there. So a little bit of a cut like that. You're only taking about 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch off of the seam allowance. You're not taking off a 1/4 inch or more. That really does not help your bag be secure. Once you spend time making some of this, you really want it to be last longer than a little bit. So, okay, now we're going to press our seams open. So in doing that, we might crush our bag a little bit, but the iron will fix that later. I'm actually going to put my clapper inside here, like a mini ironing board. Nope. So we're going to press our seams open. Kind of just grab the sides of the bag here and do that. So we can get our seam allowances open here, nice and flat. I'm going to open my zipper all the way, I think, inside. Okay. There we go. Okay, and then open the side seams here. Do the same thing on the lining. Press those seam allowances open and flat. We don't have to run a serger or do any kind of seam finishes on these seams because they'll be all tucked inside of our lining and none of them will be exposed to wear and tear. They'll all be inside the bag. It just adds more bulk. It's not like it makes the seam stronger by finishing it. So we're just going to skip adding bulk. If it was a coat, like a dress, like a suit coat, and those don't even have serged seam allowances inside for many of the seams because it just adds more bulk. Some of them are because structurally they're needed, but you don't generally need to finish seams if it's completely encased. If it's a skirt where you could see technically the seam allowances inside the lining because the lining is actually open at the bottom. It's just two hemmed skirts together basically. Then you would definitely finish those seams with something, but since this is fully encased, we don't have to do that. If you've ever taken apart a winter coat, inside most of those seam allowances are also not finished with a serger or any other type of finish. There's just not a need for it. It's just more time and thread to be used. Okay, so here is our bag. We're going to box our corners now. So now that we've opened up our seam allowances there, I'm just going to make sure that these are nice and smooth. See how I kind of crease that one in that wonky direction. You just want to stack your seam allowances here together, and you're going to pin right inside that seam. And if you put your pin into the seam and it comes out in the seam on the other side, you know you've got it lined up correctly. Whoops. And then same thing, you put your pin in the seam and it should come out in the seam, and then you know that's going to be lined up. I'm actually, if you see where this is kind of trying to buckle over, I'm going to actually press that real fast so it doesn't do that while I'm stitching. And do that with all four corners, the two of the outside of the bag and the two of the inside of the bag. Stack. I just don't like how this is lining up. Ideally, you do want these straight edges to also be lined up too. That would create a neater boxed corner. Go into the seam, come out. Now, if these stitches are getting in your way, you can move them, just cut them. You can iron pins, but you want to make sure if their heads are plastic, you don't put the iron on those. You can actually put the iron on glass head pins, or they do make metal head pins too. If you do iron your pins frequently, then that might be something you want. Otherwise, just avoid the plastic ball pin of the pin, and you shouldn't melt it, but the metal part of the pin is safe to be ironed. Try and line up my edges here. Okay. That one just wants to be kinked right there. Okay, so now we're going to go back in and stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance across here on all 4 corners. Half inch seam allowance. Ooh, that's not straight. Whoops, and then I got my seam allowance there. I don't like that, so I'm going to take that out. All 4 corners are stitched. Let's remove a little bit of the bulk here. Just going to trim them just a little bit. We don't want to go crazy when we're trimming. That kind of weakens it if there's not enough fabric for it to hold on to. So don't go too close. But we don't want all of that thickness in our corners because it just, yes, they just won't lay right. It'll just be it'll feel like we stuffed something in our corners and it'll just wear out faster if there's too much going on in there. Okay, so that's what those look like. I actually am not going to press those open on this side. And now I'm going to reach my hand into this opening here and pull out our bag like a magic trick. You can see my fusible interfacing kind of got warped there in the ironing process when I was doing the ironing of the seam allowances. So I'm going to definitely have to go back and make sure that's neater before I finish this. Go back over it with the iron. Okay, so now if you can't reach in there with your fingers to push these out, you could use the end of a knitting needle, like the wide end, or you could use some closed scissors. I think you should be able to reach in there pretty well though with this bag. It's not too big of an area to deal with. Just push these out nicely, and then we will iron those also. Something else you could do if you want to kind of level up your bag here is if you have maybe you have flowers or something, before you put your bag together, you could quilt around this, just stitch around it through the quilt batting that you fused onto there, and that'll kind of give it some three-dimensional effects. Okay, we're going to iron our corners, and then we have to ladder stitch our opening closed here like we did on our tote bags, and then push it inside and we will be done. Just going to iron right here. Just use the tip of your iron, get in there. Get your seams nice and smooth and flat. Get the tip of your iron into those corners again. Same thing with the lining corners. And since we pressed our seam allowances before, these are just ready to be ladder stitched. We will just continue that same seam allowance distance, and no one will even know that we hand stitched it closed.